Do you feel an emptiness, even when you're surrounded by people? Do you get the sense that no one truly understands you? Carl Jung, one of the greatest thinkers of the 20th century, foresaw the silent pain that haunts today's generation. Long before social media, chronic anxiety, and existential disconnection, he warned us, the soul is being ignored and it comes at a high cost. In this deep and eye-opening video, we dive into Jungian psychology to understand why we feel so lonely despite being hyperconnected, the impact of our digital persona on the authentic self, how repressing the shadow leads to invisible suffering, and why reconnecting with the soul might be the healing we've been searching for. If you've ever felt like you're losing touch with yourself, this video is for you. Subscribe and turn on notifications for more videos like this. Share it with someone who needs to hear this. Disguised loneliness, an invisible problem. We live in an age where connection seems to be everywhere. We're constantly surrounded by notifications, feeds, messages, and calls. In theory, we've never been more connected. But behind this avalanche of stimuli, there's a growing sense of emptiness. Loneliness is no longer just a condition tied to old age or physical isolation. It has become a psychological wound, affecting even the youngest, alone in their rooms lit by screens. We are surrounded, yet profoundly alone. Decades ago, Carl Jung warned that the real problem of loneliness isn't the lack of company, but the lack of communication with what is essential within ourselves. For him, true loneliness begins when you feel that no one is capable of understanding your inner experience. Today, that definition fits with surgical precision. Millions of people live in crowded cities, take part in online social groups, follow and are followed by thousands, yet have no one to talk to about their real struggles. They live like actors in a collective play where no one truly knows the script. The pain of modern loneliness isn't the absence of voices around us. It's the absence of genuine listening. We're forgetting how to listen to others and to ourselves. Loneliness, Jung said, is not a state of external isolation, but the consequence of living an inauthentic life. And the further we drift from our true essence, the more this silent pain takes hold. Jung saw this not just as a psychological issue, but a spiritual one. And perhaps that's why he remains so relevant today. Unlike approaches in psychology that focus solely on symptoms, Jung invites us to dive into the depths of the soul and to recognize that true healing comes from reconnecting with our deepest self. The collective unconscious and the identity crisis. Carl Jung introduced the world to the concept of the collective unconscious, a layer of the mind where universal archetypes live. The hero, the mother, the wise old man, the child, the shadow. These are images that transcend cultures and eras, shaping our myths, our dreams, and our worldview. But what happens when an entire generation becomes disconnected from these symbols? The answer is right in front of us. Today's generation is facing one of the greatest identity crises in history. It's not just about choosing a career or deciding how to dress. It's something deeper. Who am I? What is my purpose? The modern world, in breaking away from traditions and deconstructing old narratives, has also severed the ties to the archetypes that once anchored us. Without them, we're left adrift. Jung warned, when we fail to recognize the archetypes that dwell within us, they don't disappear. Instead, they show up as symptoms. Anxiety, existential emptiness, a desperate search for validation. Rather than listening to our inner wisdom, we look for answers in likes, trends, and internet gurus. But none of that fills the hole left by a lack of meaning. The soul cries out for depth, for myths, for symbols that connect us to the eternal. Today's generation tries to build identity out of fragmentation. But Jung knew, a true identity is born from encountering the unconscious, from a dialogue with symbols, from diving into dreams and fears. The crisis we're facing today is, at its core, the result of abandoning the language of the soul. And loneliness settles in when we no longer know where to look for meaning. The persona and the inner void. Jung also warned us about the persona, the mask we wear to play social roles. At work, in family, on social media. The persona is necessary for social interaction, but it becomes dangerous when mistaken for the true self. And that's exactly what's happening today. The digital culture is the great stage for the persona. We build idealized versions of ourselves, showcasing edited happiness, polished victories, and rehearsed smiles. But behind the scenes, the reality is different. Insecurities, fears, dissatisfaction. The greater the gap between the persona and the true self, the deeper the suffering. Jung said that when we live only to please the gaze of others, we become strangers to ourselves. The soul falls ill. This disconnection is the birthplace of the inner void, a vague feeling that something is missing, but without knowing exactly what. People try to fill this emptiness with consumption, entertainment, distractions. But it persists, because the void isn't about things, it's about meaning. And meaning only arises when we live authentically. The problem is that authenticity requires courage. The courage to displease, to be imperfect, to fail. In the logic of the persona, there's no room for that. Everything has to be beautiful, admirable, successful. And so, we lose the chance to show ourselves as we truly are. Jung believed that true individuation, the process of becoming who we really are, only begins when we stop living to please others. But that journey is lonely, and perhaps that's why few dare to face it. We prefer the comfort of the persona over the pain of self-discovery. But the price is inner loneliness, a prison of appearances, where no one truly knows us, not even ourselves. The repressed shadow and silent suffering. Every human being carries within them a shadow, the dark, instinctive, often morally unacceptable side of the personality. Jung said that the shadow contains everything we reject in ourselves. Anger, jealousy, selfishness, fear, the desire for power. Denying these impulses doesn't eliminate them. It only pushes them into the unconscious, where they gain strength and act from the shadows. Today's culture, obsessed with performance and positivity, reinforces this repression. We're expected to be happy, productive, and kind all the time. But no one is like that constantly, and in trying to appear perfect, we become fake. The rejected shadow begins to manifest in destructive ways. Panic attacks, depression, self-sabotage, unexplained crises. The loneliness we feel is often the loneliness of being separated from parts of ourselves. Jung proposed something radical: don't fight the shadow, get to know it. Accept its existence. Face your impulses honestly. Integrating the shadow isn't about becoming a worse person, but a more whole one. It's recognizing that the evil we see outside also exists within. And only those who acknowledge their darkness can truly choose the light. Today, many live in anguish without knowing why. They carry guilt for feelings they never confess. They feel shame about who they are, trying to be what they think they should be. Jung would tell us, it's time to stop running. It's time to look within and listen to what the shadow has to say. It's not your enemy. It's your key to freedom. The loss of the inner journey. Carl Jung believed that the most important journey a human being can undertake is the inner journey, the process of individuation, of discovering the true self. This path isn't external. It's not about material achievements or social status. It's a courageous dive within oneself. But this journey requires silence, introspection, and patience. 3 things that today's world strongly rejects. We live in a time where everything is urgent, where emptiness is filled with noise, notifications, binge-watching shows, and non-stop podcasts. Silence has become uncomfortable. Introspection has become a waste of time. Those who pause to reflect today are often accused of being unproductive. And so, we drift away from the one thing that could truly heal us: listening to the soul. The current generation grew up hearing that they needed to win, to stand out, to be seen. But no one talked about the importance of self-knowledge. No one taught that external success without an inner foundation is as fragile as glass. Jung saw the process of individuation as a sacred calling, something that shows up in dreams, crises, and the symbols life offers. But when we live with our focus only outward, we fail to notice these calls. The consequence of this is a life without roots, without a center. It's like trying to build a house starting with the roof. The result is a disconnected, anxious existence, often paralyzed. Jung didn't see this as a disease. He saw it as a sign that the soul is asking to be heard. Every anguish, he said, is an invitation to look within. And the loneliness we feel is the echo of a soul that wants to be listened to. Without this inner journey, we become nothing more than social avatars, playing roles, following scripts, living the life others expect. But deep down, something inside us screams. And that scream, ignored for too long, turns into pain. The pain of not knowing why we're here. The pain of existing without direction. Jung didn't promise comfort, he promised truth. And maybe, by embracing the need for the inner journey, loneliness will start to fade. Because finally, we will be in the company of ourselves. Contempt for the soul and psychological materialism. Modernity has replaced the sacred with the useful, the invisible with the tangible, the soul with the brain. Never before has human behavior been studied so much, never so much neuroscience, so much behavioral psychology. And yet, we have never been more lost. Why? Because we forgot about the soul. We reduced the human being to a set of stimuli, synapses, habits. And we left aside what Jung valued most: mystery. Jung saw the human being as a spiritual, symbolic, and mythological creature. For him, our deepest conflicts are not just caused by trauma or chemical imbalances, but by imbalances of the soul. When we live only to produce, to earn, to meet goals, we enter a way of life that ignores the more subtle needs of the psyche. The soul needs beauty, silence, rituals, and depth. It needs unanswered questions, symbols, and experiences that transcend everyday life. But the current generation has been trained to see all of this as nonsense. Talking about the soul seems esoteric. Meditating feels like a luxury. Feeling deeply is seen as weakness. And so we become machines, productive, efficient, fast, but empty. Jung said the price for abandoning the soul is high. And it shows up exactly like this in epidemics of anxiety, depression, emotional and digital addiction. It's no coincidence that so many people today feel meaningless. They live in a world that despises the invisible. But the soul doesn't disappear just because it's ignored. It falls silent until one day it screams. And that scream can come in the form of a crisis, a breakdown, or exhaustion. Reconnecting with the soul today is an act of rebellion. Stopping to feel, to ask questions, to contemplate. It's living against the current of rush. Jung invites us to do this, to re-enchant life, to realize that we are not just consumers or productivity machines. We are mystery in human form. And as long as this mystery is ignored, loneliness will remain our silent companion. The call of individuation in the age of conformity. Carl Jung believed that every human being carries within them a unique vocation, something that goes beyond profession or talent, an existential calling. For him, the process of individuation is the awakening of this inner vocation, becoming who you truly are, authentically, even if it goes against everything the world expects. But today, we live in an age of conformity disguised as freedom. Social media, which promise individual expression, have created a culture of imitation. Influencers set standards, lifestyles are replicated, and opinions are shaped by algorithms. There's a collective anxiety to be accepted, to be relevant, to belong. But the more we try to belong, the further we drift away from who we really are. Jung would say that we are living through a crisis of individuation. Because to become ourselves, we need to step away from the herd. We need to say no to certain expectations, break away from family patterns, and face the fear of rejection. It hurts, it's scary, but it's the only path to inner freedom. And it's also the path to healing loneliness. When we live to please others, we might be surrounded by people, but we are always alone, because we don't show who we really are. Jung saw individuation as a rebirth, a long process, often painful, but deeply transformative. And he knew that this journey is often lonely, but it's a fertile loneliness, a loneliness that reconnects us with what truly matters. The current generation has everything but is missing itself. It's time to listen to the call, to silence the outside voices, to rediscover what is unique in each of us. Because as long as we live in someone else's mold, we will be nothing but copies. and the soul cannot bear to live disguised forever. Jung's legacy and the future of the soul. Carl Jung's work is not just a treatise on psychology. It is a spiritual map, a guide for dark times like ours. Jung saw the human being as a traveler between worlds, the visible world of matter and the invisible world of the soul. And he knew that when we ignore the second world, we fall ill, collectively, deeply. Today, we are facing a loneliness pandemic, yet few see that this loneliness is actually a call, an invitation from the soul to come back home. Jung left us tools: the study of dreams, working with symbols, dialogue with the shadow, and listening to the unconscious. He taught us that healing doesn't come from outside, nor from ready-made formulas. It comes from a courageous encounter with what lies within. The future of mental health isn't just in medication or quick therapies. It lies in rediscovering the sacred, in treating the soul with the same importance we give the body, in remembering that we're not just walking brains, we are spiritual beings hungry for meaning. The current generation may seem lost, but it is also, perhaps, the most sensitive, the most questioning, the most open to new things. And that's why Jung's legacy has so much to offer. He reminds us that, amid the chaos, there is still a way, that behind the pain, there is truth, and that even in the deepest loneliness, we can find companionship, if we have the courage to look within. In the end, what Jung taught us is simple: you are not alone. Your pain has meaning, your journey matters, and there's a part of you, forgotten, silent, but alive, that knows the way back. Listen, the soul still speaks, even in the noise of the world. After all, maybe Jung was right. Maybe the loneliness we feel today isn't a flaw of the generation, but a symptom of something deeper, the disconnection from the soul. We live surrounded by voices, but rarely hear our own. We seek validation, but lose our sense of meaning. We run from pain, but forget that transformation lives there. Jung didn't want you to be perfect. He wanted you to be whole, to face your shadow, break through the persona, and listen to the call of the unconscious. Because in the silence, there is a voice. In the pain, a truth. And in the loneliness, perhaps lies the gateway to who you really are. If you've made it this far, it's because some part of you is trying to awaken, too. So don't keep this just to yourself. Like this video, comment on what touched you the most, and share it with someone who needs to hear this today. Maybe this message reaches exactly where it's needed most. And as Jung said, those who look outside dream, those who look inside awaken.